I think people are smart and people are interested in being part of a community because it is very natural for us. It is more natural than the corporate structures that we have nowadays. So building a community is something that people want to do. People want to belong somewhere. So let's use that. And I would hope that business would become more humane and more natural. That's my wish.
Welcome to the New Process Podcast. Learn all the tools, methods, and best practices combined with people, emotions, and a human-centric mindset to rethink your process and push it to the next level. And here is your host, Mirko Kloppenberg.
Yeah, welcome to episode 10 of the New Process Podcast. Today, it's all about how to build a process community. And therefore, I'm speaking with Miikka Leinonen. Miikka is Community Advisor at Ghost Community and Strategic Innovation Advisor at Ghost. Not an agency, not a consultancy. They call it a Ghost Company based in Helsinki, Finland. And I became aware of his work on LinkedIn, where he is publishing valuable impulses on community building. So I invited him to the podcast to find out more on how to build communities. And this is what we're going to explore in this episode. So you'll learn a lot about community building, like the elements you need to build a community, different types of communities, and how to build a community at all. So maybe a process community. And I'm going to push it even further in the recap after the interview. So there I tried to combine what I just learned with my thoughts on process communities. So enjoy the episode with Miikka Leinonen.
And now, let's start to rethink processes.
Yeah, Miikka, welcome to this episode of the New Process Podcast. It's great to have you here. As I already said, I found you on LinkedIn as an expert for community building. I really liked your posts. And now I'm happy that you're here and you can share with our listeners a little bit more what you are doing as a community advisor and so on. So, Miikka, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, cool. So then let's start right away and start with the first check-in question. So in an aircraft, what do you prefer? Aisle or window seat?
Yeah, if I travel, I try to have a window seat because I have a slight fear of flying. So it's better for me to see where the plane is and look out the window rather than look inside the plane. So I sort of go, I'm in the sky, not in the plane. So that's my philosophy. But so as said, I have a slight fear of flying, but I understand that. And I used to fly before COVID fairly a lot, I would say. And I think it's important to travel, not much because of environmental reasons. Of course, it's not good, and I'm happy to stay at home, but it's important to visit places so you don't start thinking too locally. So you're not rooted into particular place, but you understand that there are other ways of thinking and other places in the world where people have different backgrounds and different cultures and sort of be more international. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. I can fully agree. That's also my experience and what I try to teach our daughters, for example, as well, to be open there and experience other cultures and so on. Yeah, that's cool. And what is your favorite airport?
Well, sadly, I would say my favorite airport is Helsinki because it's of course my home airport. It's close by and it's fairly small, so that's many good things about that. And I think before the pandemic, I think my record time was 30 minutes from home to the gate. So
that's really good.
Yeah,
that's cool. I also love the smaller airports because you can be very fast from where you are to the plane there. Yeah, that's cool. I was just thinking about Frankfurt Airport, where I started a lot of times flying back to Hamburg and just checking how much time do I have to get from the office to the plane, and will it be delayed? And I made it there within 30 minutes as well from the office into the plane.
Wow.
But only because I knew there will be a delay, and I'll make it anyways. That's funny. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and the third check-in question goes already a little bit into the direction of processes here. What was the best process you have ever experienced?
Well, I think there are many good processes that I've been part of. Many interesting processes, and I think that the best way to describe a well working process is that you don't see the process at all. You're just in the flow. You're carried somehow, and you don't see the structures. And that has become one of my sort of like a way of recognizing badly functioning processes, is that if you can see the structures, there is something wrong with the structures. So, for example, a nice event can be a process where people are led comfortably through the whole, let's say, a weekend, where people don't see any hiccups and people don't see what's happening behind the curtain. People are just enjoying the time spent together. And when something is built well, so it becomes invisible. So anything that is somehow hidden somewhere and still smooth and well working, I think those are good processes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, perfect. So thanks for the check-in, and now we're going into the boarding, so getting closer to the content, to the flight of this episode. It's all about processes here in the New Process podcast. So how would you describe your relationship to processes?
I divide, I don't know, if everything in work, like there are projects or there are processes. And I love planning both, but I hate executing processes. And I've learned that there are people who love processes and people who are excellent at running processes. And it took me a while to admit this to myself, that whenever there's a process or a project, I love I've compared that to like a 100-meter dash, a sport, and I'm interested in the first, let's say, 5 meters of that event, and then I'm bored. Then I want to do something else. And I've understood that that's not the way any process works, that there is somebody who is willing to run only the 5 meters. But luckily, there are people who are more interested in the rest of the process. There are people who really enjoy ticking the box and seeing the end result. That's not my thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, then that's interesting. But I think that fits to your job, what you're doing, I would say. Yeah. It's not about having routines there. It's setting up new things, innovating things, and building communities. And there, I'm really interested in... so you are working as a so-called community advisor for Ghost Community? Yeah. And can you elaborate a little bit more on what that really is? What are you doing as a community advisor?
Well, if we divide the world of communities and we just slice it into a bit smaller chunks, then there are like the whole non-profit world, and then there are these, like, I don't even call them communities, but like more like social media. And let's say startups, they want to have a community around them, so they get a better valuation. But for us, we see community as something that is in the corporations. We see that to be very interesting. How can we transform the way corporations work, like internally or with their partners, their stakeholders, with their clients, and how can we help them form communities and change the mindset from top down and from this siloed way of working. So that's our area of business and interest.
Okay. Can you give an example of a specific community and how you are supporting the organization to build and develop that community?
Well, let's take an example of an internal a process. Let's say there's a company who want to renew their strategy. And how do they do that? They can do it by having management retreats and start from there, and they can hire consultants to do that, to help them with the strategy and keep it in a small circle of people, and then they need to somehow bring it to the whole organization. And that's sort of the old way of working. And what we're promoting is that how can we involve everybody in the process? How can we bring people to the same table and give everybody a voice? And that is somehow, somebody might call that co-creation, but we want to call that like a community approach to strategy building. And then how do we apply that strategy? Of course, then the same works here. We want to bring people together and explore the ideas. How will this affect our team? How will this affect my work? How should we work together? And how should we change the ways of working in the company based on the strategy that we have built together? So we don't want to break the silos, but we want to create more flexible organisms on top of the silos. And also flowing around the company. So it's not, people are not working in boxes, but sort of people are allowed to spill their ideas over those boxes and work together with other people who have similar interests, and sort of to create more flexibility and more like these fluid organisms in today's business. I don't know if that makes any sense, or does that help you? Is it an example or just more?
Yeah,
white noise?
That's quite good, and I have an idea of how a community like this and a corporation could look like. And to go a little bit deeper into that, what are the tools and methods you are using to build this community?
Normally, what we do is that we, of course, we want to have some sort of a structure. We do a plan for the community, but how we typically start is in a very agile way. We bring people together to get a sense of what they want and how they see the community forming. So we do have a plan, but we're willing to change the plan after the couple of first meetings with people. So it's not driven by us, but it is driven hopefully by the people themselves.
Okay, that's really interesting. I already tried to bring that together with processes. So that's really interesting. Let's go into that direction more. And what would you recommend to the community, the new process community? That's funny. Out there to rethink process. What are your, I would say, 3 top recommendations to rethink processes based on your experience as a community advisor?
Well, we have a basic structure where we think like, what are the needs of the people? Like, why are they there? What do they want? And of course, people want to do a good job. People want to somehow get things done. And there are people want to learn new things. And there are these fairly small things, but we need to understand what they are, because people, in the beginning, at least, people don't want to be part of a community. People want a shortcut. People want they want something for themselves. We need to understand what that is. And after that, we need to understand how can we build some trust between people. And when we have this trust, people start sharing. And then we have sort of the basic components of maybe not already a community, but anyway, a functioning network of people. That the network is providing value for individuals, and there is enough trust that people are willing to share, and that's sort of we get the ball rolling from there, and that is the basis of any community. And from that, if we go further, then we need to have the sense of ownership. People need to somehow recognize that I can influence this. I can guide this process. I have power. So people have the sense of ownership in the whole community. They're not just in the back seat, but they can do stuff. And I think what is sometimes missing is talk about the purpose. That is also important, and it doesn't have to be life-saving. It doesn't have to be a huge purpose, but it needs to be something that people share in the process. That people see that there's a common goal. It can be something more tactical, and it doesn't have to be enormous. But talk about the purpose. Why are we here? And that bonds people together. That people are doing the same thing. I think it needs to be a bit bigger than like individuals and individual goals, and it needs to be something that people can align to. And so, if we have those components, then people are more able to work together, and hopefully that becomes more seamless and more shared. Long answer, sorry.
No, that's perfect. I just have a follow-up question on the purpose thing there. Are you having something like a workshop format is there something you would call a community purpose, or how do you approach this?
I think like to tackle two basic questions is like, ask people, why are you here? What do you hope to get out of this personally? Mm-hmm. What's in it for you? That's a simple question. And if there's enough trust, people can answer honestly. Mm-hmm. And the other question, which is sort of guiding us towards the purpose, is like, why is it important that we're here? And typically the answers we get are they are interesting. They are warm. They are something that people can really relate to and share. Mm-hmm. So, two simple questions. Mm-hmm. Why are you here? What do you hope to get out of this? And why is it important that we're all here doing this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's it fits perfectly to what I'm talking about is called process purpose. So that's the first phase of the new process lifecycle, where you as a process owner, so as the one leading a process community, and now we are getting closer to the deep dive process community questions, which I have on my list here. And that's the first step of this lifecycle. So when you're improving a process, in the beginning, you should think about the purpose of this process and bring the people together, the people working in as well as on the process, and ask them, why are we here? Why do we have this process? And then develop something like a process purpose statement, which then can be used to inspire the people and to extend the community, involve more and more people, and bring that process to life. So that's super interesting, and I think we definitely need to follow up on that and have a closer look onto what you're doing there.
And I think
cool.
I think it's also important to revisit that purpose from time to time.
Yeah.
And if the group has new members, or if it is lost at some point, I think it's always good to revisit the purpose, and because that aligns people and that brings people together, and the small things are meaningless when you talk about the purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So it gives guidance for process execution when we're talking of processes here as well. So yeah, that's cool. And what I really would love to know what your recommendations are for building a process community. But before I'm going to ask you that, I think it makes sense to explain a little bit more about what I think a process community is. Yes. In my world, a process community would be all the people working in a specific business process. So like having in a larger organization, worldwide recruiting process, and there is a so-called process owner, management person, which is accountable for the existence of this process in that organization, and also being responsible for improving that process, bringing in innovations, setting up new IT tools to hire people and so on, and then roll that out. Train the people working in the process, like the recruiters all around the world, so that they know how to use the tools, the methods, and even the process purpose. So why do we have this here, and how do we contribute to the organizational purpose? Just to give you one example. So for me, this is a process community. All the people working in this HR recruiting process, for example, and there is someone moderating this community or building this community, like the process owner, and he always gets support by a team of people that are working on that. So this is what I would call a process community. And now my question is, what is your recommendation? If I am the owner of this global recruiting process in a larger organization, what would you recommend to me? How should I build my community, develop that? What should I do?
I think first you should establish like what is the community you want, and let's have a couple of examples. Do you want to build a learning community? Do you want to build a community where people share what they know and enjoy that, or do you want to build a community of practice where people who do the same stuff do it together and sort of keep each other informed and sort of day-to-day activities done together, or is it like maybe the third option is it like a community for change? Is it something that where there's a big sort of bit more rebellious idea? Is it something that people want to? Is it something where people want to change something? And those maybe those three types of communities. Is it like a learning community, community of practice, or change community? And those have a bit of distinctions and ways of working and maybe the level of passion and all those. They're a bit different. But I think it's important to decide like what kind of a community are you building, and we have like a basic structure. How we typically approach things is that we try to bring people together and share time. Maybe an hour, 2 hours. That's enough. But as many people as possible, and then maybe do that once or twice, and ask interesting questions, have discussions, and from that we typically find the people who are more passionate and who want to have some role in the community, and typically we call that like the core team of the community, and they're volunteers who want to do stuff, and that's sort of the easiest way to do it is just have a raise of hands, like who wants to be in the core team? Yeah, and typically you easily get the handful of people, and then you sort of after that you sort of have two communities. You have the core team, which is a small community, and then you have the bigger community, and then need to figure out how we can build the core team and build the trust and sharing and ownership and all that in the core team. And then how can we help the core team actually run the community?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what would you recommend to the core team to run the overall community then?
Well, in the beginning, of course, the core team needs a lot of support because they are volunteers. They don't have the time for that, and frankly, in many cases, people, even though they are given the sense of ownership, they don't know what to do with it because they sort of might be a new way of working, and it is something, if they are more familiar with the corporate way and they have this mindset that decision needs to be coming from the manager or somebody else, and so they're not able to in the beginning to grasp the ownership. So they need a lot of support, but slowly give that ownership to them and ask like, and I think the easiest way to do that is to organize an event with the core team. Let's say that we let's have an online workshop together and have a brainstorming session with the core team. Think about what we could do and then talk about different roles. Is there somebody who wants to facilitate something? Is there somebody who wants to do the invitations? Is there some other roles? So people start to get the idea of ownership and start to work together.
Okay. And then what would this team or should this team do to moderate this overall community from the core team's perspective? So how do they involve the people? Like take an example. You mentioned the three types of communities, and I would take all three for process community, but it always depends on where you are in the process lifecycle. So like, as I already said, the first step is to develop process purpose. And now we know why this process is here, but often like a recruiting process, the company is already there. We now know our purpose, and there maybe is a strategy which we would like to fulfill or contribute to with our process. And now we develop a new recruiting process, and we want to roll that out, implement this process. So there are recruiters all around the world. We have this core team of people who were also working on the new process. And now, what would you recommend with regards to the community? How should they implement this process, or even before, while they are developing the new process itself? What should they do with the bigger community out there, not being part of the core team? Does that make sense?
Yeah, in this sort of, I will take this as a fictional case, and so I will have a fictional solution. I would gather as many people as possible around this topic, and from those I would get the core team. I would spend some time with the core team and try to build this sense of ownership with them and start actually doing something. Because of course, any community, it of course, this is a sort of a side note, but community can be something also that does not exist really. It does not have any activities. It can be only a mindset that you have, that you feel like you belong to something, and that is also a community. But let's set that aside. Every community needs some actions. There needs to be some sort of a backbone to the community. So there needs to be calendar. There needs to be events. There needs to be something that people can really grasp, or there can be certain tasks. And for example, like the community can decide that we want to produce videos. We want to produce white papers. We want to do something, but there needs to be something, and those need to be somehow set and presented to the larger community. That this is what we're doing. This is the grid. This is the tangible outcomes of this community. I think with the core team, I would start planning how we congregate, how we get together, and in the core team, typically the core team is sort of like a change community. What motivates them is that they see that the world is not perfect, and they want to change it. And let's take this recruiting process. We will probably get in the core team people who see that it's a mess, and we have now this perfect solution, and we really need to implement this. So we will affect the lives of thousands of people or millions of people, and we need to get this done now because this is important. So that could be the key motivator for the core team, and then your job in the background is to help them fulfill that purpose and keep the fire going, and they will then sort of figure out what could be the motivator for the larger community. It probably is not the same, and maybe the larger community is more like a learning community. It is a community where you bring people to. In the beginning, it could be sort of like lectures, keynote speeches and all that, but that could be transformed into more discussions and sharing and learning from each other. So it doesn't have to start from like a community. It can start from events and something that really slowly builds up into more community type or network type of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Bit of a maybe complex answer. Sorry.
Yeah, but in the end, it's not that complex, or it's bringing the people together, working on a common thing, like a process, and improving that and sharing the spirit, and that's super fascinating. Yeah, cool, great.
Yeah. And what we are also offering for our corporate clients is this community management. That there is a paid person in the background taking care of the nitty-gritty small stuff and reminding people of things. And there's also, of course, a risk that this person becomes the leader of the community, and we want to avoid that. So they should not take the ownership of the community. They just should be there as a silent secretary, reminding people of their promises and keeping the schedules and all that.
Yeah, that's, and I already have a picture in mind how this would have looked like in my process, which I was working for a year ago, and how I would have used this support to moderate and build and continuously develop the community of the process I was working for. That's super interesting, and I hope that our listeners have already first ideas how this could look like for their specific business process. It could be any process in a company, like recruiting process, sales, production, whatever, or even if the listeners are responsible for the operations of business process management, which is also a process in an organization, then they are also running a BPM community there, and could apply these ideas as well. And that's super fascinating, Miikka. Thank you for these insights. Just to sum it up, what would be your key message to the New Process Podcast listeners? What should they keep in mind to rethink processes based on what you just said? What's your key message there with regards to community building?
The phrase that I need to remind myself of, I need to repeat this over and over and over and over again in my head is, how can we help people do this for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easy to say this, but as said, I keep forgetting it myself all the time, and I start planning things, and I start making assumptions of people's needs and such, but to approach everything with this mindset and this question, like, how can we help people do this for themselves? I think that is a key to community, and key to giving the ownership and purpose and the reins of people's future to themselves, and not try to manage everything.
Okay, very good. Thank you for this advice. And if the people out there are interested to learn more about what you are doing, where can they go to? Where do they find you and what you are doing?
Yeah, we have a very minimalistic website, ghostcommunity.fi. We don't want to invest our time into that because we suck at that. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Either follow or connect with me. I'm happy to happy to meet new people and happy to interact on LinkedIn. That's basically I think my favorite medium now. So find me and let's connect.
Yeah, perfect. I'll put the link to your profile into the show notes so
Thanks.
You can easily find you there. And finally, before we land the aircraft on this episode, looking into the future, what would be your recommendation to the listeners as well as to me? Which other experts we should have a look at, into which method we should look into to rethink processes?
There are new books coming out all the time about communities, so keep your eyes open. I think it is trending right now. There are new companies popping up with different approaches to this topic, and I think also exploring yourself, testing, figuring out what could work in your business and your work. I think at least for me that is the most natural way, is to be very agile and start testing and develop your own methods and approaches. That's always been my thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Thank you. And I think we already landed this episode. But before we get out of the aircraft, is there anything I have missed? Is there something you would like to share with the listeners in addition to what you just said?
Yes, I think people are smart, and people are interested in being part of a community, because it is very natural for us. It is more natural than the corporate structures that we have nowadays. So building a community is something that people want to do. People want to belong somewhere, and so let's use that, and I think I would hope that business would become more humane and more natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's my wish.
Perfect. Thank you. And finally, how would you describe our flight with just 3 words you just experienced here?
Interesting, rambling, and I would say learning.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. It should always be an inspiring experience for all of us. Or for me, it was definitely.
Yeah. For me too. Yeah, I think it's even though I took most of the airtime, I think to be asked these interesting questions and having this other angle that you're poking me from it's like a bit of a different and weird angle. I think it's fresh.
Very good. I think these are the perfect closing words here. Miikka, thank you very much for being on the New Process podcast, and looking forward to cooperating with you in this or other ways. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's recap today's New Process inspiration.
I just love what he said, that I was poking him from a different and weird angle. Yeah. Okay, I'm still a process guy. For me, processes are everywhere. And I was wondering all the time how to apply what he just said to processes. And this is what I'm going to try to do in the recap here as well. So first, Miikka told us about the 3 elements you need to build a community. The first one is trust. To start a community, the people need to trust each other before they start sharing. The second element is ownership. People need to take ownership, so need to take ownership for the community. And the third element is purpose. There has to be a purpose, a common goal for the community. So an answer to the question, why are we here? This bonds people together, and knowing what you hope to get out of this community, that's very important as a purpose. So that's the third element. And I think this can be directly transferred to processes as well. So maybe you remember the episode on process purpose. People working together in a process are a community, and they need a common purpose which they can share. So the people working in the process are a process community. And then Miikka told us about the 3 types of communities. The first type is a learning community, where people share what they know and can learn new things within this community. The second type is a community of practice. So a community where all the people are doing the same stuff, like working in one process. And the third is a community for change, a community of people who want to change something. As he said, for the people in a community of change, for them, the world is not perfect and the people want to change something. So that's the third type, community for change. And in my experience, I would say that process communities are somehow all 3 types, depending on where they are in the process lifecycle. It can be learning community within the implementation phase, when we're talking about trainings and events on how to tell the people how the new process looks like. Or it can be a community of practice, whenever the people are working in one process and they are talking to each other to exchange about the process itself. And finally, it can be a community for change, especially in the beginning of the life cycle, in the purpose, in the strategy, in the design phase. That's where the people come together and want to change something to contribute to fulfill the purpose of the community. Miikka also told us more about the steps on how to build a community. So there, the first step is to bring the people together. I think that's easy. And then to identify the passionate people for something like a core team, which then, as an inner circle, is a community for change. And in the core team, you then try to fulfill the 3 elements he told us about. So first, to build trust, to share ownership, and to create a common purpose. And based on this, then this core team can, in another step, create a backbone for the community, a common action, something tangible, a tangible outcome of the community. And this is what I would say with regards to a process community. That would be the business process itself. So the business process is the outcome of a process community. And now we have to make this more tangible, not just having process documentation, which you can use and talk about. I'm thinking about making it experienceable, like when you set up trainings to tell the people about process changes, you have workshops to discuss about the process, or even setting up events to inspire the people, creating inspiring experiences. Maybe this is already a teaser for the next episodes coming up, besides the ones talking about the tools, but more about that at the end of the episode. But let's pick it up again and try to dive even deeper into how to apply what we just heard to processes, to process communities. So there, I would say we often, if you are applying something like the new process role concept there, we often have already parts of the people for the core team, like having the process owner, the process architect, or even a team of process architects, and the process managers of the different process instances of the process. So this could be already a formal core team of the process community. And then they have to build the bigger process community of the people working in the process all around the world. So it's the core team, or the task of the process owner, the process architects, and the process managers within the purpose phase, the strategy phase, and the design phase to build this idea of the community and then roll it out and implement that by establishing trainings or holding workshops or even bigger events like simulations or business games. And in the wrap-up, after the interview, Miikka already warned me that these formal structures of having a process owner and process architects and process managers assigned can be a little bit difficult compared to informal structures. So keep in mind that process owners, process architects, and process managers from a formal team may be a little bit different with regards to passion and motivation. So could be that it's necessary to build something like a core team out of these roles to have a team of passionate people to push the community ahead. Yeah. And then create inspiring experiences. And I hope that today's episode was also a little bit kind of an inspiration for you, and that you can apply some of these ideas to your own process as well. As an outlook, in the next episode, I'm going to talk to Ole Tillmann. He is an innovation and communications consultant from Berlin. And we're going to talk about how to pitch your process. So stay tuned for the next episode. Have a great day. Bye-bye and auf Wiedersehen.
You've been listening to the New Process Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode for more tools, methods, and best practices to rethink your process and push it to the next level. Thank you for listening.
And by the way, I just want to say thank you to all of you who already wrote a review on Apple Podcasts. So all of them 5 stars. That's really awesome. Thank you very much. The latest one is from Process Larry. Oh, I'm just wondering if you know Miikka. So greetings to Helsinki. And Larry wrote a very informative podcast where real domain experts discuss the future of business process management without the usual sales pitches and software hype. Yeah, thank you, Larry. Oh, I hope I pronounce your name in the right way. So if you liked what you heard, would be great if you also head over to Apple Podcast by following newprocesslab.com/Apple and just quickly give a 5-star review. So thank you very much and bye-bye.